Let's start with an open hand. An open hand that is tough enough to release. I don't know everybody's story, but this story has played out so many times in life where a dad has no choice but to release, to let go and release his children out into this world. By the way, isn't that scary? Think about having to let your children go in this world that we live in. That's a terrifying thing. Here's the story of a dad who had these two sons, and for whatever reason, his youngest son got this bug in his bonnet that, hey, you know what? Essentially, and by the way, here's pretty much what he says. Dad, I don't want to wait till you die to get my inheritance. I want it now. Now, can you imagine hearing that from your child? And so here's the dad with this choice. Well, this tells us something about his relationship. He had an open and honest relationship with his son. I mean, his son felt secure enough that he could come and say that to his dad and not get the belt. I don't know how, but you know, you can't spank anymore. I forgot. Forgive me. Don't send that off to HCRS or whoever. He had a mature relationship with him. You know, there are times that we have to hold our children. There are times, you know, like in that picture earlier on, crossing that bridge. You don't know it, but we're going across quite a ravine underneath with a river rushing down through there. You know, can you imagine just saying, okay, kids, go ahead, run out there. I know that David, for example, would have climbed over the side pretty quick. That's what he does. He likes to climb, likes to jump, likes to give his daddy strokes. There are times you've got to hold your children. You know, walking by the road, for example, you don't let them go because they may wander out in front of a car. You know, there are times you've got to hold on. But then there's also times that you've got to let go. There are times when we need to release them. Sometimes that letting go is joyous. You know, when I walked Danielle down the aisle and I turned her over to Micah, it wasn't easy, but it was joyous. Watching David grow and become a man, isn't easy, but it's joyous. There are times that we have to release them, and those times are joyful. There's times that we have to release them because they won't listen. Dr. Dobson would call that tough love. Times we have to let them face the price of their choices. Letting go for this father in this story, I'm sure, was not easy. Not anywhere near as difficult as the truth behind the story. Now remember, this is a story, but it's a story that represents who God is. And as God, in the very beginning, had no choice but to release his children out into the world because Adam and Eve had rebelled. Do you remember that part of the story? Where they chose their own way. And as a result, they were removed from the paradise of Eden and set outside. And the gate was closed. Well, that's a difficult thing. We think about the power of God, the majesty of God, the might of God, the wrath of God. But God has the heart of a father. And I can't imagine that came easy for him. In fact, it would be from that moment on, from the moment that Eve plucked the apple, or fruit, we all think it was an apple, but whatever it was, that fruit from that limb, from that moment on, God has been at work to restore a broken relationship. Because that's the kind of dad he is. But he had to have a hand that was tough enough to release, to let go, to let them do their thing. You see this in this story here, the son's rebellion was severe. It was painful. As Jesus tells this story, there are some probably in his audience that have had that similar experience. And they know what it's like to have a child wandering in the wilderness, to have a child that's strayed away. And some of you do too. You have sons or daughters that are out there and you don't know what they're into. You don't know what they're doing, and you're praying for them and you're seeking God for them. And it hurts. It causes heartache. but it was also severing. You know, it wasn't just the insult of, Dad, I can't wait for you to die. The story goes on to say that just a couple days later, he packed up everything and he left. Off he went. And he wasn't going off to college. How many of you have taken your kids off to college? He wasn't joining up with the military. He wasn't heading out to his new family with his wife. He was simply getting out, leaving. Kind of like saying, I don't care about Dad. I don't care about his rules. I'm going to do my own thing. And off he went. Severe severing because he had something to rebel against. There was a structure in the home. Whatever reason, whatever motivation was, he didn't like it. Eve was tempted. Remember the story? The serpent came and said, "Tell me something, Eve." This is my paraphrase. Did God say you could eat anything in this garden? And Eve said, no. It's not what he said. We can have anything we want except for that one tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He said we can't eat of that one because if we eat of that, then we'll die. Oh, Eve, that's not true. You won't die. What happened is God knows if you eat of that, you'll become like him. Who doesn't want to be like God? Why would God keep something good from me? It looks good. Let's try it. Boop. And from that point on, well, all hell broke loose. And there's been trouble ever since. And God at work to restore that relationship. They rebelled against something that was set for them. This son in the story rebelled against something that was set for them. For their good. For his good. Believe it or not, kids, how many kids do we have in here? Your parents' rules are there for a reason. I know, Levi's like, oh gosh, Pastor, it's true. And you may not believe it, but we care about you. And so we've given you rules and standards and boundaries. And you know, parents, don't you just love this? Well, Jimmy's mom lets him do it. I'm not Jimmy's dad or Jimmy's mom. I'm yours. And these are the rules in my house. You see, the prodigal in the story had something to rebel against. There's a lot of folks, listen, and maybe some of you in here, but I don't know that any of you are like this. But there's a lot that just simply throw their hands up and say, hey, do whatever you want to do. Just don't bother me. Wasn't it, did anybody catch the news about these kids? There's about 6 kids found running naked through the streets here recently. And 2 teenage girls happened to find them, bring them back home. The mom had gone to be with her boyfriend 3 days prior. Left these 6 kids in the care of their 14-year-old autistic brother. 3 days she was gone. Now she's going to go to jail. But you know what? That's not like the only story out there like that, is it? There are kids that wander the streets till all hours of the night. Parents that just don't seem to care. In our story, he had something to rebel against. Adam and Eve had something to rebel against. Standards, rules. Dads, listen. When I say that this dad had an open hand tough enough to release, he also had a hand that was tough enough to enforce. He had rules. And for whatever reason, the son had said, I'm done with these rules. I'm going to do my own thing. Well, sometimes that happens. And we have to let him go.